Hi there, nice talking to you. One of the first things parents start teaching their newborn babies is to talk. The ability to talk increases as we grow up. Some of us master the art perfectly and become speakers of note. Others don't, but excel in other ways. But the fact remains that anyone can open his mouth and talk. Most people talk perfect sense, but in many cases it seems as if the brain comes to a complete halt and the tongue idles. A radio announcer has to meet certain basic requirements and maintain specific minimum standards to be perceived as successful. Obviously, his speech must be free of impediments like stuttering or lisping, etc. And he must be able to read fluently and with comprehension. A good voice quality is also a prerequisite, and his diction and enunciation must be perfect. The reason for this is that not nearly everybody listens to the radio under ideal conditions. There may be many distracting sounds in the background like dogs barking, people talking, traffic noise, etc. Remember, the radio listener has only one chance to grasp what you are saying and cannot rewind your speech like the reader of a newspaper can reread an article until he understands the gist of it all. It all boils down to effective communication. To illustrate what effective communication is, let me tell you a little anecdote from World War I. A century ago, the means of communication were obviously primitive and limited. An urgent message was sent from the front by field telephone to the base camp, and it read, "Please send reinforcements. The company is going to advance." But the message was received at the base camp as, "Please send 3 and 4 pence. The company is going to a dance." Yes, there was communication, but it certainly was not effective. If you want to communicate effectively with your audience, and assuming that you have a good voice, you're a fluent reader, and your diction is clear, there are certain non-negotiable principles that need to be adhered to. Never patronize your listeners. Broadcasters who treat their listeners in a condescending way estrange their audience with their aura of superiority. Genuine modesty, sincerity, and respect will enhance your acceptance by your listeners. Be prepared and focus on what you are going to say. Think before you open your mouth in front of a microphone. If you have nothing sensible or interesting to say, rather keep your trap shut. Don't believe that you can lead your listeners up the garden path. Make sure about your facts, or you could end up with embarrassing egg on your face, like the radio announcer who tried to make a clever remark about a record-breaking white truffle weighing more than 7 kilograms, dug up in Tuscany by a truffle-sniffing dog and valued at about 200,000 rand. She obviously had never heard that a truffle is a rich-flavored fungus that grows underground and is eaten as a delicacy, because in her ignorance, the announcer remarked that this truffle must be the most expensive piece of chocolate in history. Well, she was mocked in the newspapers for weeks about this faux pas. Never ever swear or use foul language in any broadcasting studio, whether on air or not. Someday, somewhere, somehow, you will be caught with your pants down. And remember, what goes out on the airways cannot be retracted. Be extremely careful of slander. It could easily cost you your job if you utter false statements or derogatory remarks that damage a person's reputation. In fact, you could find yourself being sued and end up in court. Keep your opinion to yourself if you have nothing good to say about someone. Make sure that you are never late, neither for a live broadcast nor for a recording. A good professional broadcaster is always on time. The 7 o'clock news is to be read at 7 o'clock, not at 20 seconds past 7. There are many sides to radio announcing. Yes, of course you have to be a confident speaker, that goes without saying. But there is much more to it. It is of prime importance that you be well informed. You simply have to know what goes on in the world, in South Africa and in your region. People don't only listen to the radio to be entertained, they want to be informed as well. How can you inform your audience if you're not properly informed yourself? Read newspapers, listen to other radio stations, watch TV news, follow events on the social media, whatever. But make sure that you are clued up. A professional radio broadcaster ought to be an all-rounder. You should be able to read the news, present music programs, conduct interviews, compile documentary programs, comment on sport, host chat shows, etc. Once you have experienced all or most of these disciplines, you may decide to specialize. Some broadcasters excel as newsreaders because they are credible, objective, and authoritative. Others become excellent music program presenters because they have a thorough knowledge of music, and so forth. Each discipline has its own requirements. For example, a newsreader is expected to know how to pronounce strange or foreign personal or place names correctly. And, in the same vein, a music program host should know that the Bolero by Ravel is not the Bolero by Raffle. And a sports presenter ought to know the Russian tennis player's name is Maria Sharapova and not Sharapova. I think you know what I mean. The world has indeed become a global village, and its residents have instant access to news and information, thanks to the internet and the social media. The better you are informed, the more credible and professional you will sound to your listeners. And remember, it rubs off on your station as well. A radio station is rated by its listeners in terms of its weakest link. So, the reputation of a radio station depends greatly on how professional its presenters are. If you are a substandard broadcaster, your station will also be perceived by the listeners as substandard. The quality and correctness of your language is more important than you might think. Consider this. No newspaper will allow written articles to go to press if they are full of language errors, spelling mistakes, incorrect grammar or tenses, etc. So, why should any radio station allow presenters to use poor or substandard language? International research has indicated that in first world countries, people regard the language as used by newsreaders in particular as the standard. Listen to programs of the BBC, for instance, if you want to hear the Queen's English, the so-called Standard English. Why should we in South Africa be any different? Be proud of your language, whether it's English, Afrikaans, Zulu, Setswana, or whatever, and set an example to your listeners. After all, you do have an educational responsibility as a broadcaster as well, whether you like it or not. Depending on the nature of your radio station, your broadcasts will be either formal or informal. If it is informal, it does not mean that you need not be professional. There is a huge difference between warm, friendly, correct, professional presentation on the one hand and incompetent, foolish, embarrassing babbling on the other. Whatever you do, never abandon your professionalism. By the same token, you should never sound pompous or bombastic on air. Don't assume a different persona when the microphone is switched on. Be yourself and let your true personality be reflected in your presentation. Conducting a good interview is an art. Key to a successful interview is preparation, preparation, and preparation. Don't mislead yourself by thinking for one moment that you can conduct an interview if you know little or nothing about the subject to be discussed. Read as much as possible and acquaint yourself with all aspects and all sides of the matter. This means dedicated research. Only then will you be able to ask intelligent and relevant questions. Remember that you represent the listeners. Ask the questions that they will most probably want answered. Don't try to be clever and show off your knowledge. The secret of a good interview is to listen attentively and carefully to what the other person has to say. This will automatically prompt you to ask relevant questions. By all means, play the role of devil's advocate, but never take sides or show your own opinion. Remain unbiased, objective, impartial, and always polite. A community radio station will in most instances probably require a more informal, relaxed and laid-back approach than a national station. A warm, personal touch will endear the residents of your community to your station and make them feel that you belong to each other. In many instances, this will lead to people spontaneously sharing their stories with the station and, by implication, with the community, making for interesting, even excellent program material. Look for the local newsmakers in your area and feature them in your programs. I guarantee you, this way you will discover many entrepreneurs, unsung heroes, storytellers, etc. in your immediate vicinity. In conclusion, always be yourself. Don't emulate others. Develop your own personal style and be enthusiastic and energetic about your program. Don't be afraid of making a mistake. We all do, because we're all human. After all, to err is human and to forgive divine. A slip of the tongue is okay. You will have egg on your face for a few days if you refer to the FA Cup final as the fuck-up final, but I guarantee you, you will never make that mistake again. Remember, you're just as good as your last broadcast. Never go home totally satisfied, because there is always something you could have done better. Broadcasters who are convinced of their own excellence pave their path with failure. But those who are prepared to learn from their own mistakes and continuously strive to improve their skills are the ones who are appreciated and remembered by the public. So, carry on broadcasting and enjoy every moment of it.